Let's Get To presents
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here come the Astros, burning with desire. Here come the Astros, breathing orange fire. Here come the Astros, with winning on their mind. Here come the Astros, number one every time. Go, go, Astros. We want Houston! We want Houston! Alvarez hits a high drive, center field. Beerling's back. This game is turned upside down.
And the pitch is lifted to right by Castellanos. Long run for Tucker over toward the line and foul territory. Makes the catch, and the Houston Astros do it again. 2022 World Series champions.
And now, Go Astros. Astros baseball from three guys who've been there since Art Howe had hair.
Here come the Astros, breathing orange fire. Here come the Astros.
There are only 71 games left in the Major League Baseball season, which means we are at I don't know, is it the happiest time, the All-Star break? It used to be a thing. I don't know. I do know that this is Go Astros, and we're happy to be here. I'm Andy. That's Jim doing his best Popeye imitation from his bed in Cancun. That is Brian from his home office in beautiful New Jersey, as usual. And gentlemen, we're at the All-Star break, like I said, so it's a time to take stock. It's time to celebrate the game of baseball. I guess that's what we're doing today. I guess let's start off with something happy. What are we celebrating? What do the Astros have to celebrate right now? We'll start with the more conscious of the two of you, Brian.
They're in the playoffs as of today. They're only 2 games out, and at some point they may have both Jose Altuve and Yordan Alvarez in the lineup for more than 2 weeks, and if they do that, like their chances.
It is very interesting to me that we are where we are, and Altuve has played all of 32 games this year. That got to be frustrating for Jose, but it's certainly frustrating for the fans and anybody watching this team and waiting for them to put together a prolonged stretch of good play, because that seems to have been grasping at straws a little bit so far this year. Jim, what are you celebrating besides being in Mexico?
Last day. I'm celebrating everything. The reality is we all had I think on this show we had a very healthy expectation and of how things should go and where things should be the minute a ball broke Altuve's hand. And we had the Rangers get off to an astronomical, unworldly kind of start that even the Astros in their runs didn't have. And for some reason, many of our fan base believe that to be a real thing. I never did. I think that you cannot be anything but happy being 2 games out at the All-Star break with 4 games left to go against the Rangers, by the way, whose ass you just kicked, knowing that at some point it's not going to just be half the Sugarland Space Cowboys playing in these games. So would I like to be 10 games up? In many ways, I feel like our fan base, and tell me I'm wrong, guys, in many ways, our fan base would be much more hand-wringing if we had only a 4-game lead over the Mariners, but in first place. I don't know what it is. So to me, only being 2 games back, I feel really good that this team is finally going to get to hit its stride, either after the break when everybody's rested and after the trade deadline when I'm assuming some kind of move will be made to improve the roster. I'm good. I'm happy. Bring it on.
It's worth noting that last year this team won 106 wins, and that's the abnormal season.
Yeah,
they were 2 games below 500 in 2020. We can blame that on 2020 and 60 games. They certainly didn't play that way in the playoffs. They were 95 wins in 2021. To win 106 games, they wrote this and said this last year. Appreciate that, because this is a more normal season, and they're likely going to end up with a win total between 90 and 95 games. I think it feels worse to us because Aren't we just supposed to be in first place by dint of the AL Westness of it all? And for this year, the answer is no.
Well, and I do think I don't want to bang on our fan base too much, but I do think we have a lot of fans who are not used to being in first place, or not being used to not being in first place. And so we're 2 games out. 2 games can be made up literally in a 2-game span or 1-game span if we were playing the Rangers directly. We've got a healthy appetite of Angels, Rockies, and Athletics coming out of the All-Star break. Angels without Mike Trout, and Lord knows, I don't think Ohtani's going to be pitching for a minute with that blister. Just depending, blisters can be nasty if you don't treat them right. And then Rendon is Rendon.
I expect Ohtani to pitch because it's not like the Angels are saving him for next year.
I wonder if Ohtani is going to pitch, because it's not like from Ohtani's choice, it's not like Ohtani's going to be on the Angels next year.
Yeah.
But I think we're in a good position. And honestly, I think the Rangers are much improved. I think they are a team that has every reason in the world to try to go for the playoffs this year and try to secure the division, but they're going to be a tough out. I'm actually, and this isn't just because we went 1-3 against them this past weekend, but I'm a lot more concerned about the Mariners if they ever figure out how to hit the ball consistently, because their pitching is really, really good. And we saw a lot of it over the last 4 days.
Good Lord, I'm going to be annoyed by George Kirby for many years to come.
Yeah. You would hope that they're going to Mariner it up and have to trade him or something, but that's really the only reason that he shouldn't be a thorn in our side for a while. So we talked about the injuries, and I think everybody knows what we're talking about. Altuve, we're talking about Alvarez, we're talking about Lance McCullers Jr., Jose Urquidy, Michael Brantley.
I'd like to point out that this shirt was designed by Lance McCullers Jr. and worn on this show, because this might have been the last meaningful contribution Lance McCullers Jr. has made to the Astros.
Of those gentlemen, thank you for that. Of those people, there does appear to be a timeline now for getting Alvarez and Altuve, and then Urquidy a little bit later back. Urquidy's going to require at least 4 starts in the minor leagues, because they're going to have to build I think he threw a simulated game of 40 pitches yesterday. And we'll see today if he had any pain, but if not, they'll send him out on a minor league rehab assignment where he'll get 4 starts. Alvarez has hit on the field for the last 3 days. Altuve's oblique injury is considered to be minor. He's eligible to come off on the 15th, I believe. So outside of Michael Brantley and Luis Garcia and McCullers Jr., we're going to get some people back. I'll start with Jim on this question. Is that piece of the pie enough, or do the Astros have more moves to make?
Well, there are moves to make, but the piece of the pie is enough. I think if you look at what the Astros win totals were when just Altuve has been back, they've been relatively unbeatable. And I think that Altuve, it's such the cliche that he is the straw that stirs the drink, that whole thing. But the team is different when he's leading off, or I guess hitting second now. But I think getting those 2 back is a bigger improvement than most teams are able to claim through whatever they want to do in the trade deadline. I think as most of us do, think that it's possible to see another bat. And I think there will be more arms. I wish our fan base would acknowledge the fact that the Jose Abreu of the last month is the Jose Abreu we thought we were getting. And if that continues to be the guy, then this again is a much different team than it was in April and May.
This weekend aside, which I know is always a big aside, the team has hit really well since about June 1st.
Yeah.
And Abreu's a big part of that. They've gotten better contributions than we expected from guys like Corey Julks, who I was real down on beginning of the season. Chas McCormick is Chas McCormick. We'd all like to see him play more. And Yainer Diaz is a real live major league hitter. So there's been, and he's getting a lot more playing time because he's been the full-time DH mostly. So the offense has been improving, and if you get your 2 best hitters back, that would only enhance that.
Is it enough, though, to get Alvarez and Altuve back, hoping Abreu continues his June versus his May and April? can we stop worrying about Alex Bregman yet? Or is that a big point of concern, especially considering that Dusty seems to insist on hitting him somewhere in the top 4 in the lineup? It feels to me like there's more holes than just missing Altuve and Alvarez, but maybe putting them back in the lineup shifts things enough that Tucker can keep hitting, Abreu can keep hitting, and you're adding 2 proven offensive players that covers up a little bit more for Bregman. There's a question
but
there
even
somewhere.
Bregman, but to your point though, Bregman did hit when Altuve was playing. Like Bregman has had stretches where he's looked like Bregman of old. And I guess the question of worrying about Bregman, I don't think you worry about Bregman because you're not going to replace Alex Bregman. So you might as well just move on to figuring out holes you can fill or your holes you can fix.
Well, and I think
bet on track record. He's usually been better than this. So the expectation is he'll be better than this over the last 3 months of the season.
And I bring Alex Bregman up because his offense is more concerning to me, or his lack of offense has been more concerning to me than seeing Martin Maldonado in the lineup, 3 out of every 5 days or 4 out of every 5 days. Now, I don't want to start the Maldonado conversation. I think we all agree that Yiner should be catching more than he does. And we should see less of Martin Maldonado. But if the offense was performing the way it needs to perform, we would care less. And as we've said a number of times about what Martin Maldonado does or doesn't do. It's the fact that we had 2 bad months of Abreu. We've missed Alvarez for 30 games now. Altuve, like we said, has only played in 32 games. Bregman has struggled a lot this year. Tucker has had some streaks where he has not looked great, although he's done really, really well the last several weeks. So it feels like we're in that part of the season where we've seen pieces. We've yet to see a sustained series where everybody's putting everything together. And that, to me, is injuries. Is there a different reason, Brian?
No, I mean, the best offensive stretch was in the month of June. They slumped a little in the last weeks. But the problem with that is that most of that didn't feature Yordan Alvarez, didn't feature your best hitter. And Altuve was hit and miss in the lineup. He had some nagging injuries through that. So had you gotten all of the stuff they got in June and had Yordan Alvarez in the middle of the lineup, well, that's really effective. It's an offense that's not going to be one of the top offenses in the league. But if they're healthy and firing on all cylinders, they can be a really effective offense.
I wonder anything to add?
What's that?
Popeye, anything to add?
Well, what I'm curious about, and this is maybe an off-season question of, because I felt like we dealt with this offense last year, but when did the approach or when did the strategy of how this team is put together take it from being, a good enough offense to win with good pitching, but it used to be one of the top 2-3 offenses in the league? And we can discuss that again. This can be a great middle of November, what are we going to talk about question. It's just interesting that the approach of that has changed so much, or the perspective or expectation has changed so much since the early days of the dynasty.
I mean, my opinion, and I'm sure there's numbers that will tell me I'm wrong, like happens on a weekly basis on this show, but Springer, Correa, Reddick were a better trio than Tucker, Pena, whoever's playing center field right now.
Yeah, okay.
I think ultimately that's what it is. I think you had better players who were hitters. Springer was a better hitter than anything we've put in center field. Now, I don't want to get into the Twitter argument that I saw over the weekend about how the Astros never replaced Springer because in the aggregate they did. But I think there's been a downgrade in basically our outfield. And it's not as good a hitter as Correa was. I think that's what it is. But I agree that's a good off-season conversation. Like Brian, you have more to add to that.
Reddick was a league average hitter, and he was our number 9 hitter in 2019.
Okay.
And no one was like saying, we ought to move Josh Reddick up in the lineup because he was the 9th best hitter on a team of. It's more an appreciation for the amount of talent on the 2019 team, which was staggering. And I'm going to stop there.
Our 7, 8, 9 that year was Gurriel, Chirinos, Reddick.
Yeah.
So hopefully then the strategy gets back to finally upgrading those holes that we've discussed. Okay, well, hopefully that'll happen. I mean, I'm sure it will. They know as much as we do as far as what happened. Yes.
It's really hard to do that. And again, same point I made earlier, right? We should appreciate the 100-win seasons because they're really rare.
Yeah.
And these 90-ish win seasons are much more common. And as our perspective of people a little more gray in our beards than we'd like, 90 win seasons are also pretty rare for this franchise. So they're also worth enjoying too.
Well, I just wish they'd bring John Singleton up and just fix this whole problem.
You know, there's no way Milwaukee could have used him. So, it's good to find some surplus talent just laying around.
Yeah, I swear we have a group of nouveau riche fans. Oh, he's hitting in minor leagues. We'll just bring him up because it'll be better than Blymander is. That's not.
May be true, but it's not going to save anything.
No, and John Singleton is 31 years old, about to be 32, and has had his opportunities in the major leagues. You don't magically get better at 31. No. That's just not a thing that happens.
Is it a cool story that he's still trying? Absolutely. But I think what people are forgetting is when you're playing in Sugarland, you're playing in the PCL. It's an incredibly hitter-friendly scenario because most of those parks, the ball flies. So most of your talented pitchers, teams keep at their AA level. Like it's a great story. If we were one bench bat away, I would say, yeah, bring him up, see what happens. But we've got much more important fish that need to be fried.
And not to mention, he's not on the 40-man roster. We have some 40-man roster limitations. We have some roster move limitations. Ronel Blanco is out of options for this season, which means the next
he's got 2 more times to get sent down.
I thought they had said over the weekend that he had been sent down for the 3rd time. Is that
wrong?
But
you can be sent down 5 times.
Okay. I must have misunderstood what Blum was talking about, which he could have also been wrong, which is sacrosanct. I understand. Speaking of Ronel Blanco, I think one of the pleasant surprises for the Astros is going into the season and counting on Lance McCullers Jr., counting on Jose Urquidy, counting on Luis Garcia to be significant contributors. None of that has happened. And so you've had to replace and patch a rotation with Brandon Bielak, with Ronel Blanco. And I think for all intents and purposes, those guys and JP France, those guys have exceeded expectations. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And exceeded their not just expectations as fans, but expected numbers of what we have had a right to expect based on their strikeouts, walks. They've gotten a little fortunate, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, Bielak, we saw what he did against the Rangers, where he went 7 shutout innings, and then, had a poor outing yesterday by losing a game 3-1, a situation where the Astros once again bats went silent. JP, it's weird. Like Brian, you're right. I don't know how we all feel collectively if that's your playoff roster. If those are your playoff rotation, mm-hmm. That's a problem. But I think every year of this dynasty, the Astros have had a pitcher or two outpitch their talent for a length of time to keep the team afloat. We won't mention who did it in 2017 on this show, but I think it's proof that the Astros are better at looking and finding talent than a lot of other organizations, and that continues to bear out.
So with those aforementioned guys stepping up, we've had other issues. So realistically, as I'm looking at our rotation as it stands right now, we have Fromber, and then we've got a lot of question marks. Hunter Brown has regressed, or the league has caught up to him, or he needs to make adjustments. Whatever verbiage you want to use on that, he is not as effective as he was certainly last year in a limited sample size, and then earlier this year. By no means a bad pitcher, but it feels like he's getting hit on pitches that hitters are expecting to see. So he's not doing a great job of fooling anybody. Bigger concern for me is Christian Javier over the last 3 or 4 starts where he's not fooling anybody, and it's starting early. What, if anything, and I'll start with you on Jim, gets fixed with that is Dana Brown right that our main concern is still a left-handed bat, or do we really need to be looking at picking up a rotation guy, and hopefully a good rotation guy?
Well, I think the answer is so yeah, I think they need a left-handed bat. I think I think we can all, whatever fool's gold we thought with Brantley coming back with the second stretch, I think is over. So I think a left-handed bat is essential. I think for Hunter Brown, always the simplest. It's Occam's razor, right? The simplest solution is, I think that he's not thrown this much ever, and I think there is a fatigue factor worrying in for a lot of these guys, frankly, both from bullpen of overuse, but also Hunter Brown just never doing this in his career again. Javier is a big concern, and I've read a couple of articles where there's questions of like release point and things like that. And I don't pretend to know enough about pitching to know that. What I do know is that in previous times, we've had pitchers with those types of issues and they've been fixed almost immediately. And, a couple of starts, even like Verlander had one a couple of years ago where, 2 starts I had off, my release point was off, so they fixed it. I'm curious as to why it's not getting fixed. And that has me really concerned, because I think at his best, he's actually the best pitcher on the staff. I think even better than Fromber when he's at the top of his game. So I think it's a concern. I think at a minimum, another starting pitcher to continue to eat innings, and then hopefully fall into the bullpen in the playoffs is probably something Dana Brown's going to have to take a look at.
Brian?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I wrote about last week was that you're getting production, not all-star level production, but you're getting production out of all three of the sort of outfield job share of Chas McCormick, Jake Myers, and Corey Julks, with a big improvement in Corey Julks in June, really sort of helping that. And if that's the case, you can focus on the rotation, which is a bigger issue, both from the standpoint of you have one reliable starting pitcher at this moment, and both Brown and Javier seem like people who need to have their innings limited, particularly as you're thinking ahead to October. Obviously, the return of Jose Urquidy, who is a league average pitcher, but man, does he eat it. He eat innings, would be really helpful as part of that. So I think that, to me, the rotation, and really, I think you may be looking at 2 rotation arms at the trade deadline, and I would prioritize that ahead of a left-handed bat right now.
And it would obviously be nice if there was some way to afford to go back to a 6-man rotation like they were able to do most of last year, because you are limiting innings, but getting everybody regular work. Of course, Brian, you pointed this out on the show a couple of weeks ago. You can't do that when the bullpen underachieves, and there's now more than just the Montero question in the bullpen. And I think some of that works itself out with fatigue, but it still has to be something that we have to see if it comes around or not.
I'm actually less concerned about the bullpen over the last couple of weeks. And I don't want to give Montero too much credit, but he's had 2 decent outings in a row, and he's pitched multiple innings in those outings. Against the Mariners and the Rockies. So, your mileage may vary on what you're actually looking at, but I think he's a repairable guy. The rest of the bullpen will go through its fits and spits, but at the end of the day, I will take Presley, Abreu, and one other guy out of that group, and be pretty comfortable going into the playoffs.
It feels like that guy is Neris to me, although Maton. And look, I'm not giving up on Montero either. If you followed his whole career, and people should have, because he played in the same division, he often has hot spurts and cold spurts and hot spurts. It's who he is.
Having said that, if somebody like a Kendall Graveman comes available again, because the White Sox are going to throw up the white flag, no pun intended, I'm all for that. But I think the bigger need is got to be a rotation piece, if not 2, and a bat if you can get it. Because I think our lineup solidifies pretty well when you get Altuve and Alvarez back. The left-handed bat is just more about matchups and later inning type stuff. But I think, despite what Dana Brown is saying publicly, the rotation's got to be the biggest concern at this point.
Well, and the cliche, Brian, really is you can never have enough pitching. And I think one of the things that's got me really frustrated is how many of our fan base feel like they didn't go hard for starting pitcher in the offseason, but at one point they thought they had 7 starters. Like, I mean, it's abnormal to lose 3 starting pitchers, almost an entire rotation to injury.
Well, I know you asked, you mentioned Brian, but I think my perspective on that is it takes 2 to tango to sign a free agent, right? So
Right.
if I'm a free agent pitcher, and it's one of the things that drives me crazy, it's we didn't sign that guy, so we didn't try hard enough. The player has a say over what team they're going to go to, and most starting pitchers are going to look at your situation and go, "Oh, you've got 7 guys. I don't know that I want to, I want to go someplace where I'm actually going to be guaranteed to pitch."
And not slot 4 and 5 at 4th or 5th, right? Because
Yeah,
you're not going to be
so
top 3.
and despite what our fan base seems to think, Justin Verlander, or I'll just pick him because he was a free agent pitcher that was considering us, isn't looking at our roster going, well, McCullers probably isn't coming back, and you can't count on Brown, and I don't know what Javier's, that's a pick and a poke. So just I'm going to take my chances and be the 7th guy in their system. That's not how pitchers operate. So even if the Astros made overtures to other starting pitchers, which I kind of think they did, not Justin Verlander, not a serious one anyway, it takes that player to say, hey, that's a good opportunity for me too. It's not just, hey, I want to be in Houston because all these fans think I should.
Yeah, I mean, it's unlikely they were going to sign a free agent for the reasons that Andy identifies. The one thing you can criticize them for is they didn't sort of identify some type of hybrid starter reliever that they could have acquired through trade, though I kind of looked and I'm not sure there were a lot who got traded this offseason. So maybe there was a deal out there, but it isn't sort of one that sort of say, like, I can look at it and say they could have beat this team on this team. I think one thing to note, they did, it's been a useful thing. He hasn't been the best pitcher, but he's been effective. He's been useful that they took Ronel Blanco and made him a multi-inning guy so that he can start, which wasn't clear in spring training. In general, they have 1-inning relievers, and so this puts there's a lot of things that are effective to that, but there's no true sort of multi-inning guy with it. It's like we can get a couple innings from this guy and it'd be really effective. Seth Martinez is the closest guy they have to that. And he's a league average reliever, I think, which are, again, valuable, better than replacement level ones, but also, when Seth Martinez comes in the game, I'm not like, we got to shut down right now.
Well, and it's very much like a bullpen that's built to, they don't have a lot of guys built to either ride out getting blown out or ride out blowing somebody out, but they're really good if you're in a close ball game, you need to win.
Yeah. Which they played a lot this year, and the bullpen's been one of the biggest strengths of this team. They've been, they've essentially been able to make up for Montero by having Phil Maton level up this year. And so they are very solid. They are very solid when they get to have their best relievers in a game, in a close game.
And I think that's, Brian, that lack of deal making is part of what I don't begrudge Jim Crane for taking his time finding a GM and finding a guy who is going to fit with him. And that seems to be Dana Brown. But I think if there's a penalty for that, is that you missed out on being able to evaluate what's in your system if you're Dana Brown and making moves, because when you come in at the end of February, right before spring training, you're kind of forced to be in an evaluation mode without being able to do a lot with that. I think organizationally, they were hoping Sean Dubin was going to be healthier than he has been this year, although he threw, made a fantastic start against the Rangers last week. They, right, wrong, or indifferent, were probably counting on Forrest the Yeti Whitley to be real. And that poor kid, maybe, I think Dana Brown was saying he might be pitching in August again, and indicating somehow that he's going to be a reliever for this team, which is just, I don't know why you keep dangling that carrot out for the fans. But that's something Dana Brown said over the weekend. But yeah, I think there could have been some more major league B or C pieces that were available that we probably didn't explore based on the timing of a GM hire.
Well, and also too, I mean, and having the internal options, as you pointed out, Andy, people want to say the Astros were not punished for 2017, but not having 2 first and second round draft picks for 2 years in a row actually does have an impact on the team. And you're seeing that now.
And Click went very heavy with outfielders in the draft last year when he started having picks. So
for reasons.
And that the draft is a crapshoot. You take best available, but we didn't target arms until much later in a 10-round draft. It'll be interesting to see how today and tomorrow goes as far as what the Astros consider priority on picking up pieces through the draft. None of which are available to help us this year. Don't put that in your head. I saw. Hey, congratulations, by the way, Brian. LSU set a record. Paul Skeens and then Dylan Cruz 1 and 2 in the draft. First time that's ever happened in the history of the Major League Baseball draft. And I've already seen people claiming that Paul's going to be pitching for the Pirates in a few weeks, which is just asinine. But
I mean, if the Pirates were still in the race, you could see him in the bullpen. But the most likely thing is, like, you pitch so much at LSU,
I would shut him down.
Yeah.
I would sign him to whatever he needs to be signed for,
Yeah.
and then hey, go to Florida, hang out for a while.
Yeah. Most likely time we'll next see him pitch is in the Arizona Fall League, which is in
Right.
October, and he's probably going to be up next season, though.
No, next season's fine.
Yeah.
September after a July signing is a little bit that's rough. That's happened a handful of times in Major League Baseball.
And usually with relievers.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the point where we need to wrap up. What's the last 70 games look like for us? And I'll start with Brian on this one. What do we have to look forward to? What should the outlook be? Where are you in how the finish is going to look?
Yeah. So the big goal is to win the American League West, because the winner of the American League West will get a bye to the second round of the playoffs, to the division series. And they are they're 2 games out. The Rangers have been coming back to earth over the recent month, and you're like 12 and 19. I think I saw. I'm probably off on that, but we've taken advantage. Some of it. It'd be nice to take advantage more of it. Would have been nice to win an extra game against Seattle and be only 1 back. Would be nice to get better Christmas presents, etc. Yeah. Obviously, as we've talked about here, the key to the Astros is getting back their best hitters and improving on offense. And then the other thing to take a look at is what moves are they going to make at the deadline to shore up a rotation that is solid but wobbly right now, particularly with guys like Javier and Brown, who seem like some point in the second half they just need 15 days to go on the injured list, and those 15 days can be they can take Jim's hotel room down in Cancun, do a little bit of running, take some vacation, not do their arm, and come back in 2 weeks ready to go.
Don't drink as much as I've drank, though. That's not a good idea.
Also good advice.
Jim, how about you?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to see a much improved Astros team, both from those 2 internal options that I do think will be back with Jordan and Altuve. By the way, adding 2 of the best players in the league back to the lineup, but also just doing a quick scan at the strength of schedule remaining. Of the 3 teams that we care about, the Rangers have the 4th most difficult strength of schedule for the remaining of the season. The Seattle Mariners have the 14th, and your Astros have the 20th. I think things line up for them to win the division by 3 or 4 games, and I think that's what we will see. How about that for some fucking put your dick on the floor and say, let's do this shit? I don't know what that means, but
It
If you
feels
put your dick on the floor, I'm logging off this Zoom.
yeah, fair.
Are you on your knees when you're doing this, or are you standing up on your feet?
I kind of meant tables.
One of those is more impressive than the other.
Yeah, fair.
As for me, I like the idea that we open up with 3 against open up the second half with 3 against the reeling Angels, who have lost Trout for basically the rest of the season.
Rendon as well.
Rendon for a little bit. And then we follow that up with the Rockies for 2, and then the Oakland A's, who have a run differential of negative 248 with 71 games left to play. That's hard to do, ladies and gentlemen. So that is a historic Oakland A's team. Good luck, Las Vegas. And then we have Texas for 3 at home. So that gives us about a week and a half to get and
one-
Alvarez back in the lineup and hopefully figure out Christian Javier.
One of those nights with the Rangers, by the way, it's Hello Kitty night. So
I bet Chandler Rome has already started he's already probably crafted his tweets about how much he hates that.
yeah.
But I think, I honestly don't know how good this team is, but I'd sure like the chance to figure it out with Altuve, a healthy Altuve and a healthy Alvarez in the lineup. And hopefully some moves. And I don't even think it has to be Dylan Cease or Shane Bieber or some of the other higher end names that are being popped around. I think a guy that profiles like a Jose Urquidy or better, in addition to Jose Urquidy, goes a long way to fixing a lot of our pitching problems. Of course,
I think they aim for one person who can start in the playoffs and then one person who could be a swingman in the playoffs, but can eat innings.
But I think you're looking at more like a Jordan Montgomery than you are looking at a Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer is a pipe dream.
We're
going to get Scherzer and Ohtani.
It's important to remember the Astros farm system is not highly rated, and you can have all the, we got Yainer Diaz and we got Jeremy Pena. We keep bringing people up. Takes you want. It depends on what other people think. That limits them on a player to be traded like Cease or Bieber, who have extra years of control. In fact, I'm not sure the White Sox are going to trade because they're having a terrible season. But if I'm the White Sox, I'm like, I have the best player in the division in Luis Robert. I can still win this division next year if things sort of break my way. And so there's no reason for them to get rid of Dylan Cease. They're likely to get rid of people whose contracts are up, like
Lance
Giolito, Lance Lynn, and exciting news should be on the market for Astros fans, reliever Joe Kelly.
Who that will be the first person I ever called to be DFA'd if that happens.
Yes, and you're gonna, you will. I really expect. I think the Angels could move Ohtani, and I expect the Astros to get him. I don't think they're going to get him. I do think they might move him though.
That will be, if we have to part with Chaz, which may be a thing that happens. Chaz for Ohtani seems fair to me.
Seems fair.
My non-snarky take is the Angels are so all in on this season, and their owner so doesn't want to be the guy who trades Shohei Ohtani that he's not.
Yeah, maybe not.
I realize that's a lot less fun.
Yeah,
I would be willing to give up Chas McCormick and even my personal favorite Jake Myers in that deal.
Ohtani could play. Corey Julks would be playing a lot, so we'd be on him.
He played 2 positions apparently, but Ohtani can do that too. So
Ohtani is the Bugs Bunny of 2023 baseball, so it's fine.
It's fine.
All right, so I think that does it for us. We're a little bit over time. Any parting shots, or we're just going to leave it with a final Go Astros?
No, I got 3 party shots. One, I want to wish a very happy birthday to Cedric Thomas Smith, filmmaker. One of my very best friends down here in Mexico, celebrating his birthday. I do want to also point out that we will be adding a trip to the Let's Get To schedule. We'll be visiting the Fredericksburg Nats on Labor Day weekend, the Fredericksburg Nationals, and we will be back in Houston. Let's Get To will be for the Guardian series. So come out and see us. Go Astros.
It's important to note that Fredericksburg is in Maryland, not in the Hill Country for our Texas-based listeners. So
and my wife.
Huh?
And my wife. No, babe, didn't just get a baseball team, and I forgot to tell you.
Does the Fredericksburg in Maryland pretend to be a wine capital of their state as well?
I believe the answer is yes.
Yes.
I can offer this bit of analysis, my only bit of analysis on the Astros draft. They took a guy named Bryce Matthews, and I'm going to be annoyed that he spells his name with an I instead of a Y for the rest of his career. Go Astros.
Similar to that, I'm happy for the Tascasita kid that we drafted. I'm not sure about the 6'8" guy that from UCLA that we drafted right after him, but hopefully we see them in the majors, and they both have long careers with Houston. Go
Was the
Astros.
6'8" guy from UCLA coached by John Wooden? In that case, I'm going to get more optimistic.